So, some things to consider before you become a 911 dispatcher. Have you ever heard of shift work? Many people have not done shift work and actually come to discover they don't like it. A typical shift for a law enforcement employee is 06 to 1800, or as civilians call it, 6 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, a 12-hour shift. Now, for those who work a 12-hour shift, there could be overtime, meaning you might work 14 hours, you could work 16 hours. If you're not physically or mentally able to do something like that, this would be something that you would want to work on before you think about taking this type of a position. Have you ever heard of seniority? In shift work, seniority means that whoever's been there the longest gets to pick what they want first. It's kind of like giving the best room to the oldest kid in the family, and then the younger kids have to just pick the leftovers or maybe even share a room. The next thing is something called mandatory overtime. Do you work a 9 to 5 right now? Have you ever been forced to stay late until, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night? Or as we in law enforcement call it, 2100 hours. Mandatory overtime means that because you work for a law enforcement agency, the state or the county or the city, whichever entity you work for, by law can force you to stay and work overtime of a predetermined amount as needed for the public good. For instance, folks who live in a hurricane area, if a hurricane is coming, do you think everybody goes home at the police department? No, they stay a little bit longer. Mandatory overtime. Some agencies might even require their staff to stay at work, which means they're sequestered. We'll talk about that some more in the future. But in the meantime, think about it. Mandatory overtime. Seniority, meaning a brand new employee who might be 40, 45 years old might still have to work weekends, nights, and holidays. And shift work, which means all the employees have to work weekends, nights, and holidays. It's a fantastic career. You get to serve your community, but these are things that you have to think about. Most people will say anything to get a job, but when they're looking at mandatory overtime and they have to pay a babysitter, some people start to panic. So let me know, do you still want to be a 911 dispatcher?